You're about to watch one of the most influential thinkers of the 21st century, the man who virtually founded the personal development and self-help industry, and in the process, transformed our understanding of the human mind. His name is Richard Bandler. As the co-creator of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, he's improved the lives of millions across the world through his seminars and self-help products. His works have been translated into over 20 languages, and his books, CDs and DVDs regularly top the self-help charts.
NLP is about getting the best procedure from the people who have succeeded the best at any task and teaching other people to do it. It's about having lessons that tell you how to design the inside of your head just like you would design the inside of a room.
Dr. Bandler personally trained to NLP Master Trainer level the internationally acclaimed lifestyle guru Paul McKenna. And motivational powerhouse Anthony Robbins freely acknowledges that NLP has influenced his own work.
I think the tools I've created are evolutionary in nature. We've never had a way to think about how we think. Being trained primarily as a physicist taught me to think in terms of how things work in systems. I used to design compiler systems, and that technology of teaching machines to do what humans did got me the idea that we could teach humans to do what other humans did by looking at the process, not the content.
Thanks to Dr. Bandler's mind training techniques, therapists, athletes, business people, writers, artists, musicians, teachers, entrepreneurs, negotiators, politicians, and countless others have become more successful and more effective at what they do. NLP has even inspired and been featured in TV hit series. Through NLP, millions have become assured and more self-confident, fostering a positive outlook on life that's freed them to achieve their goals and fulfill their ambitions. And because Richard Bandler teaches others the art and science of excellence, celebrities who excel at what they do are happy to work alongside him.
What I do is I teach people to think differently. You think differently, you feel differently, therefore what you can do expands.
Whether you want to become a master in communication, reach the pinnacle in your powers of persuasion with techniques that will leave everyone winners, or simply overcome a phobia and gain more confidence, watch now and understand how you can change your life forever with Richard Bandler and NLP. Iwan Thomas, MBE, is a gold medal winning athlete. He's represented his country at the Olympic Games and was part of the gold medal winning 4x400 relay team at the 1997 World Athletics Championships in Athens. Iwan's career was hampered by injury, but at the 1998 European Championships in Budapest, he won gold in both the individual and 4x400 relay events. And he remains the UK and Commonwealth 400-metre record holder.
My initial sport, my real dream sport as a child, was actually BMX racing. So I was always into competitive sport, and I did that purely because there was a BMX track in my local village. I loved danger, fancied myself as a bit of a stuntman. Obviously had fast leg speed, was quite quick, and very soon became quite good at that. I came fourth in the European Championships, went to 2 World Championships, and then from there I was just a normal school kid who loved doing everything, football, rugby, cross country, you name it. And then I slowly developed or found out that I was pretty good at running, and I seemed to be beating everyone else by massive margins, and that's why I took up athletics. My first ever games I went to was the Commonwealths in '94. I was still a student. It was a real novelty to even be selected to go to a major championships. And I ran all right. I ran like a Welsh record. I ran a time of 45.9, but at that time I didn't train, so I thought, hang on a minute, I nearly made the final. What will happen in the next Commonwealth Games? Could I be good enough to win that? And that was my journey, was trying to improve that much from one game to the next. '96, left university by now, went to the Olympics, came away with a silver medal in the relay, which was amazing, and in the individual, I came 5th from lane 8, which for a 22-year-old who was a first year out of uni was quite an achievement, but once again, I knew I could run better with full-time training. I then moved here to live Wilkinson's track here, and I trained full-time. The next year I was probably overconfident in '97. I was running the quickest times I've ever run. I ran a British record, and I went into the World Championship final believing I could win that. Big mistake. I didn't stick to my normal game plan. I went off way too hard, and I ended up coming 6th. But if I hadn't made that mistake in '97, by tactically getting it so wrong, there's no way in '98 go into the Commonwealth Games, of which I won, and the European Championships, which I also won, and the World Cup. I won everything that year purely because I believe confidence was high, but also I knew how not to run, because the year before, when it really mattered, I'd got it so horribly wrong that in '98 I did my own race and stuck to my game plan. You have to be purely selfish and focused on that one lap of that track. Nothing in your mind, everything has to be clear. The only thing you're thinking about is how you're going to run that race and how it's going to feel like when you win it. That's it.
So what is it that took Iwan to the top of his game? Richard Bandler uncovers the secrets of his success.
One of the things I've discovered about many successful people is they're hard to satisfy. That's part of what propels them forward. But for you to consider entering these races and competing, you had to be able to have something which propelled you forward. You had to think of this as the thing to do. I mean, did you see yourself as a winner of races?
I just wanted to, and everything I still do, be the best that I could be at that.
When you set a goal of winning this BMX race, did you actually see yourself coming in ahead of other people in your mind?
Before the race, I'd probably go and sit on my own in a quiet corner and just, you know, go through it in my mind.
And when you went through it in your mind, you didn't come in fourth?
No, or crash. No.
Or crash?
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Probably good pieces of planning on your part. So you have this life-size movie. Do you see yourself in the movie, or do you see what you'd see if you were there?
I think I see it through my own eyes. I wouldn't actually see me. Like a bird's eye view. I just imagine myself running.
So you're inside what you do, and it's clocked out perfectly. I notice you have a stopwatch, an imaginary stopwatch you can check against. So you switched to the schools and you started running, and you said you became more serious about it. So what changed at that point?
Well, I knew I was good at athletics, but I'd never concentrated on it because I was doing all the other sports. Everyone had told me I could be good at it, and I think it was a case of maybe I was a bit worried. Fear of failure, really. Everyone said, oh, you're so talented, you could be very good. And I suppose I didn't want to try in case I was a letdown, but in this new school I did try. I did 5 events on school sports day, and I won all 5 events, and I broke every single school record. And luckily for me, a really keen PE teacher literally gave me a clip round the head and said, you know, I remember it clearly. He said, you know, what are you doing? He said, the last time I saw talent like that, they went on to get an Olympic medal. And I was like, oh, whatever, sir, don't be stupid. I'm a 16-year-old kid. And he made me go to an athletics club, and within a month I ran for Great Britain. Once
he told you that, you know, he'd seen talent like that win the Olympics, did you start to make a movie winning the Olympics?
No, I still didn't really believe it, and it wasn't until, well, that year I went to the World Junior Championships, and I didn't belong to an athletics club. I didn't have a coach. And I had like 1 pair of trainers, and it was all very happened so suddenly for me. It was literally, as I said, I did the school sports day. The week after, did the county championships. I won that. Then I went to something called the English schools, came second. Then from there, I had an international race, and it all happened so quickly. And it wasn't really probably to the summer that I went to uni that I started to mix with other athletes and train with some and think that, who were older than me, and I was beating them in training. And I just thought, well, maybe the teacher was right. Maybe I could do well.
Okay. Now, how did you get yourself to train every day?
Well, when I was at uni, I went to the Commonwealth Games off very little training, if I'm honest. I was a typical student, going out too much and telling my coach I was training like 3 times a week, but I was training once a week. I ran a time of 45.9, which I didn't make the final, but I went away and I actually gave myself a stiff talking to, because I thought, if I can honestly run that kind of time off very little training, what could I actually really do if I pushed it?
So when you gave yourself a good talking to, you have this again, inspirational voice that looked at something which could be called not doing well, instead said, you know, well, I didn't really train, man. Really, if I applied myself, how much better could I do?
Yeah.
Okay, and you have a tendency to listen to that voice as opposed to other voices.
And that's what happened. I finished my degree. I moved to Southampton. I worked in a clothes shop in Next, part-time in the mornings, folding clothes and selling clothes, and in the evenings I trained. And I just said to myself, because this was long before we had like government lottery funding, this was my mum and dad saying, look, we'll financially help you for a year, we'll pay your rent, let's see how good you could be. And I just, through respect to my parents, I just trained my heart out every night, to the point that maybe I was sick most training sessions, just to see how good I could be. And that year I just had a breakthrough.
Did you keep thinking about winning when you were training?
I just remember words that people had said to me on the way, like a guy called Dan I used to train with, the best 400-metre runner in my event before me, Roger Black, used to train with my coach before. And this guy, Dan, said, look, you've run 45.9 off nothing. If you train, within a couple of years, you could be the British record holder. And I was like, oh, do you really think so? And And once again, that did happen, but I didn't. It was hard to imagine it because I was a long way off in terms of time from running what I had run.
But you kept playing his voice over and over.
I remember
again.
little things people said to me all along in my career, and when training hurts, and when it's cold, and it's freezing cold in Southampton, and it's snowing, and you know, it's not nice to be out there training. I'd remember all these things people had said to me. Use that as my fuel to get up and train.
I wanted at this point just to stop and see if any of you out here have questions for him.
Iwan, a question I have for you. When you were describing living the race, was it visualization or were you feeling the race? Because you've used auditory quite a lot. You know, you kept hearing the voice of someone advising you, you can do this. You're getting a mixture of those different senses.
It was obviously people had said things to me along the way, so I was listening to that. And yeah, just thinking the race through in my head.
He saw it from his own point of view. When you associate with a memory or with a constructed image, which is what he was making, a constructed, so to speak, fantasy, he was running down the track, he was inside himself, he's going to feel implicit muscle movements. It's going to feel like it feels like if you're there.
You know, I didn't feel the physical pain, but I'd also go through it, and I can feel exactly how much wind will be brushing past my face at certain parts of the race. You can imagine the noises from the crowd, and you imagine the parts of the race where the lactic acid is starting to build up and where you want to concentrate. So I think visualisation was really a massive part.
See, immense detail in preparation. And what he's talking about is precision of mental rehearsing. And if you rehearse to win, you're much more likely.
I'd always expected athletes to be more kinesthetic, you know, they feel things more. And the first part of the interview was focusing very much on what he was seeing. And I got a bit confused by that at first, and that was why I raised the question. And I think then Richard really helped clarify, because he described how Iwan would see from his eyes, for example, on the BMX bike was one example he used. And really at that point I realised actually what Iwan is doing, he's feeling the entire sequence, and that he could, you know, live the running or the riding of that particular activity, and to the split second know the timing. It was phenomenal to see that, and it actually, I could feel that the acknowledgement of how kinesthetic the sportsman is helped me immensely, because I will be working with some sportsmen, and to know how strong that bond is to kinesthetic is very important for me.
Somehow or other, intuitively, you seem to have picked the best suggestions from people that, you know, were the champion ahead of you, that said, you know, you could stick to it, you'll do better. You know, if you can do this half-assed, then boy, you could really refine your skills. And instead of saying to yourself, I'm always going to be a half-assed trainer, you decided to take that to heart and kept playing it in your mind. Yeah. You took a few good comments from people and kept playing them to motivate yourself.
A very influential person on me was a 400 hurdler called Chris Akabusi, and it was 1998 season. 97 I'd had a great year. I set the British record and I was running well. In the beginning of 98 I was having a lot of injuries, and Chris invited me around to his house, and at the time I just thought he was bananas, what he told me to do, but it really helped. I remember, he said, what do you want to achieve this year? And I said, I want to be European champion and Commonwealth champion. And he said, right, get a load of post-it notes and just write Iwan Thomas, European and Commonwealth champion, and put them in every mirror, every cupboard in your house. And my girlfriend at the time was like a bit annoyed about it, but that's what I did. And every morning I looked in the mirror, every morning I opened the fridge, it was facing me, and I was just so ready for everything that year. And I think, you know, that was a great bit of advice that Chris gave me, just to see yourself as what you want to become, and then you'll do it. I'd say as far back as 3 months before the European Championship final, all I thought about was seeing myself. I knew where the track was, I knew exactly the layout of the track, grandstand. I imagined myself coming through that finish line, winning time and time again in my mind. So when I actually lined up for that final, it was almost second nature. I knew, I had never imagined myself coming second or third in that race. I only ever saw myself winning it, and that's what happened.
If you find out how the best batter thinks about batting and what state he goes into and what he does, you can teach other people to bat well in a sport. And, you know, the cloning of success and the structure of success is going to make the whole ability of us to learn. Once this gets into the lower educational systems, then we're going to be able to keep up mentally with our own technology. And on this planet, I think that's real important. You know, you've told us about your accomplishments. Now let me ask you, were there any big setbacks?
Loads of setbacks. I've lost many more races than I've won, and I think in my career particularly, maybe my event, the nature of my event, the history of it, with like people like, you know, Derek Redmond, Roger Black, David Grinley before that. It's such a tough event, your body will break down. And after the very high of 1998, where everything I seemed to touch turned to gold. Complete opposite the following year, 1999. Very, very serious injury. I was out for a whole year, and never ever gave up, but struggled to get back from those injuries.
What did you do in your mind so that you didn't give up? How did you keep your eye on the prize?
It's very hard, actually, when you're injured. Athletics is obviously an individual sport, so when you're running well, it's great, you get all the credit, but when you're not, it can be quite a lonely sport, to be perfectly honest with you. And you know, you're at home injured and you're watching whatever championships is on TV, and it's very frustrating because I wanted to be out there. But I never ever gave up. I still believed I could run well. Okay. I still believe now, actually, believe it or not. Now I'm retired, I still look at the current athletes now and I think, you know, if I could train 5 days a week, I could, you know, and that's not me being cocky or anything. That's just looking at the times people are running now are a lot slower than what I was running 10 years ago.
Here you are, you're injured, you're watching TV, somebody's running along. And when you say you still believed, okay, what did you actually do in your mind to believe that you could rehabilitate yourself and run again?
I'd go back to the good times and just think I just want to, you know, if I can get back to 80% of the good times, I can still beat these guys now. So that's what I would do. I'd just go through the races in my mind. And
so you go back to the races where you did exquisitely well.
Yeah.
And when you did those, did you see yourself in the race, or did you again do it from the inside?
Do it from the inside.
Did it, so you go back and you remember what it felt like and all of those things.
My problem was it wasn't my psychology, you know. I still believed I could do it. It was just my body let me down. You know, my body could no longer train at the level it needed to be that world-class athlete. It was a real battle, really, to try and you know, get my legs to listen to my head.
But a good idea, nonetheless.
Yeah.
You know, you know, you don't seem somebody who had settled for being an underachiever.
No, and that
doesn't seem to be in your nature. But
no, maybe, and that's what was frustrating with the end of my career. The fact that it kind of fizzled out and I never got back to where I wanted to be. You know, I would have loved to have finished my career on a high note.
Yeah, I'm sure Muhammad Ali would have said the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The wheels come off your vehicle, you don't never buy a car again, you don't never drive again. You know, you go around to the trunk, you pull out the spare tire, you put it on there, and then you go back and you remember where you were going. And if your car is completely in the ditch, then you take a frickin' taxi cab and you get there. Because the important part is where you were going, not the wheel.
When you've had an injury, you often get scar tissue around that injury, which 9 times out of 10 will be okay. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, I've pulled this hamstring now 3 or 4 times. What's going to stop it tearing again? So I seek the advice. Actually, I didn't tell anyone at the time, but I got hypnotised just to tell my mind.
It's not a sin, you know.
No, not at all. But you know, I didn't want my rivals to think I had any mental weakness because I didn't see it. You know, it was just in the back of my mind. Am I holding back when I should be flat out down the back straight? Am I psychologically holding back a little bit, trying to cover that leg? So I just got hypnotised to tell me, you know, that basically the leg would be fine, and it was.
I mean, top performing individuals, any little thing you can do. I remember swimmers shaving their legs, telling me it might give them a half a second. And, you know, and I don't think that shaving your legs would give you a half a second, but believing that it would actually would make them go a little faster. Yeah. Certainly anything you can do that gets you to mentally perform better is going to help.
I've still got the British record for the 400. I've had it 13 years. And half of me thinks, oh, that's quite cool, I can still be introduced as a British record holder. But I honestly, for the love of my sport, I just wish someone would come through and beat it. And there are a few British guys who are running quite well, but they're not running well enough. And half of me wishes I could, you know, me and Roger Black and Jamie Balch and all the boys could put our spikes back on and give them a bit of a spanking, you know. I'd love to run again, but it's just finding the time, and also would my body handle training 6 days a week. So I do other things now. You know, I've done a couple of London marathons, I've done a couple of triathlons. I'll never be good at those events, but I like to always give myself a challenge.
If you can take that same mental strategy and apply it in the future to whatever you want to do, you know, because I'm here to tell you, if you can be successful at one thing, you could be successful at anything. Being a successful bowler and being a successful businessman are not profoundly different. It requires adequate motivation. It requires learning strategies. The bowler needs physical skills, and the businessman needs mental skills. They're slightly different, but the motivation start is the same. You have to be able to see yourself being successful and strive for it in every domain in life. You could design a clothing line if you wanted. If you got it in your mind and decided you wanted to be an expert clothing designer, you could get it in your mind, you could become an expert trainer. You could get anything in your mind, and if you put the right voices and you went through it in your mind and figured out how to do it and how to get ahead of other people, you could win at anything. It's not just seeing yourself do something, it's being able to get inside those shoes and feel what it's like to actually do it, and to do it successfully. A lot of young people now decide they're going to get married, but they never think about what it's like to be married. And so it never lasts very long. You know, they don't think about sleeping in the same bed with somebody, waking up in the morning, having to wash dishes and pay bills and raise children and change diapers. They don't run the movie long enough that they get to the end of the race, so to speak. So they don't have any idea about how life will change and how things will be different. And to be successful, are you married, by the way?
No.
No? Okay. Well, think about her.
You put me off it now.
Yeah. Hey, if you run a good race, if you run a good race, you know, and you make it so it's all happy and it's a winning situation, then it's going to be a good thing. Make sure that the race for the rest of your life you've got planned out as much as you did winning, you know, an Olympic medal. You want to win at everything you do in life. And whatever your endeavors are, whether it's a marathon or whether it's a career, all of the things that you do, you should plan out equally that well. Anyway, questions from you people?
And how did you pick yourself up, like, time after time? Because you sort of feel more and more frustrated every time it comes back. So how do you do it?
Yeah, it's really frustrating when you get an injury. I only had probably 2 serious injuries, but I did keep getting reoccurring injuries, which were just very bad timing. So like I said, little hamstring tears, but they happened at the vital time when I'd missed the championships. I mean, I learned a lot about myself when I was injured. I think I became a much better person for having to battle through the bad times. I think I learned a lot about myself, and hopefully that will stand me in good stead for the rest of my life, I think.
Good advice. Keep telling yourself that you can do better and you can get back and you can win. It's better than saying, oh shit, I'll never be as good as I can be. He still says, they're running at 80%, I can beat everybody. It's a good attitude. Can't beat a good attitude.
Ewan, I was very interested in something you said earlier on about how you knew how long it was between now and then.
Yeah.
How do you know how time flows?
I think really it's just years of training. So I think I just installed in my head, I just knew how quick times were. So I could do a rep without timing it. I still can, like up to like a year ago training with my coach, say we're doing a session of 200s, I'll come across a line and I'll shout to him, 23.8, and he'd go, yeah, it was 23.7, you know, and I'll be literally bang on. And I'm not timing it, I just know what that will feel like.
Most of us have such a good circadian rhythm in our body. If we set the alarm in the morning for 7 o'clock, we wake up just before it goes off. So almost any device that exists, a measurement, you can put in your mind, and if you keep calibrating and making sure it works as well as the external one, that when I work for the U.S. military, they have something called a rangefinder, and I taught people to build one inside their mind and to keep measuring the one inside their mind against a real one, and eventually people get to the point where the one in their head works as well as the real one. He's spent so much time working with the tool called a stopwatch that he's calibrated to it perfectly.
What I'm interested in is what senses does Ewan use when he's actually calibrating?
You're running around and you look over at somebody and you go 37.5.
Yeah.
Something has to tell you which numbers to say.
Yeah, I don't know how it works.
Well, just stop for a second, okay? I tell you what we'll do is okay, think of one of the races that you can remember well.
Yeah.
Okay, close your eyes.
You're going to ask me to do it now, are you?
I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes and run through a short part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you know how long that is?
What time between when and when? I know where I am now in my mind.
Okay, wherever you are.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you know what to say, which numbers to say? Do you see a little stopwatch?
I don't know what I see. Well, the number comes into my head.
Okay, when it comes into your head, what does it look like? Is it written on a scope? Is it written on a scoreboard?
I've never even thought about it.
I know you haven't, but that doesn't mean you can't.
I think I just see it on a stopwatch, to be honest with you. I just see the digital numbers, the writing.
You see the digital numbers, so you have a little digital stopwatch in your brain. Where is it? Is it on? Is it up? Is it 2 feet in front of you?
It's right in front of my eyes.
Oh, so it's right here. You've got a thing, and it's a square little thing with digital numbers, or?
I'm just seeing the numbers. If I'm honest with you, I'm not even seeing. I'm just seeing the numbers in the air.
Okay, so you have little digital, like they are on a TV when somebody's running, kind of like all those races you watched on television. There's this little digital thing that runs.
Yeah.
Does it start at the beginning and run through the race and you read it out, or does it just appear when you want to know what's on it?
It just appears. It's not ticking around or anything. Okay. I just know where I am at a point in time.
When you see the stopwatch showing digital numbers, where do you see it, and is it there the whole time, or does it come and go?
Just when I need it. I think I can just...
Okay. So you bring it up.
But
on the-
I've never thought about it till now, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
I just know, as I said, when I've training before, I'd come across the line and I'd shout to my coach a time that I saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd normally be really close to within it. I'd
Yeah.
never be far out at all.
Yeah.
And I
See, my
I
guess
just
is
taught
it
myself.
starts at the beginning of the race, runs unconsciously, and then when he wants to look at it, he just takes a look at it.
brings
But
it
it's running all the time. He's just not
Yeah.
aware of it all the time.
I don't see it all the time. It's not like I can see 1.1, 1.2. I don't see
Yeah.
it ticking over. I'll just see it at that finish line.
Thank you very much.
I'm interested in your marathon preparation, because obviously you can't visualise through. I mean, I don't know what your time was, but say 3 hours
3 hours.
plus.
Yeah.
I mean, what strategies did you use for
Marathon was a weird one for me. It was just I just really wanted to challenge myself, and I didn't. If I'm perfectly honest with you, I've done it twice. First year I didn't train at all. I just stepped up there as an ex-athlete to see if I could do it, and I ran like 3:58. This year I thought, wow, if I can run 3:58 off nothing, maybe I could run 3.5. So I trained for 6 months really hard, and it just went wrong on the day. I just didn't feel well. I ran 4:19. So next year I'm not training again. I'm just going to do it. But I didn't really. I think marathon's a different ball game. I think for me, the psychology is while I'm doing it, not preparing for it, because it hurts so much. And I remember this year I was really hurting, and I was at 21 miles, and someone in the crowd shouted, "What happened? You used to be an awesome athlete." And I was like, shit, I was a sprinter. Like, people can't understand the difference between sprinting and running for like 4 hours. Charming. But anyway, yeah, well, have you done marathons before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good time?
3:09.
Yeah, good. Very good. I don't think I could ever run that. Well, maybe I could. After today, I'm going to take on the world. I'm going to bring out a clothing range and and never get married. Yeah.
We've only spent a short time together, but I wanted to ask, is the way in which I've asked questions today taught you anything about yourself?
Yeah, massively, actually. It's interesting for you to say that, you know, if I've been good at one thing, I could be successful at something else. And it's something my girlfriend always says to me. You know, I do a bit of TV work, and I've got a couple of companies, but I've never really thrown my full energy into those things as I did as an athlete. So it's quite interesting to see if I could really focus everything I did as an athlete to be the best that I could be into the rest of my life, then hopefully
Gosh,
I'll
if you had
be
this
right.
voice that said to yourself, you know, if I can run my business this successfully, half-heartedly, imagine if I did it really well.
Yeah.
What's interesting is many people who are excellent at their job don't actually know why. And it takes an interaction with someone like Richard or NLP practitioners to tease out what is it that they do that's so effective.
You see, if you take your own internal processes that work and you bring them into consciousness, this is your chance to take control of your mind and to become successful at whatever you do. If you want to start a business at home and you're going to be self-initiated, you have to look into the future. You have to make what you're seeing in the future compelling, which means you have to be able to adjust your fantasy of where you're going to be so it's so strong you feel it in every fiber of your soul. And to me, this is what NLP offers the world. The technology that I developed is all about freedom, the freedom to be successful, so that rather than, you know, your life flopping off, you get to take control of it and make serious choices about how you're going to think about what you're going to think about, and taking the best of your mind and making it work for you, and the rest of it forgetting about. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your help and your questions. And hopefully from this, we can teach a lot more people in the world how to be a lot more successful. And I certainly want to thank you for coming by. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much.
You know,
I enjoyed it.
I expect to hear good things about you in the future.